That open border policy is resulting in what I say second and third order effects. These are the effects of a bad policy that are creating havoc in this nation. It is creating a human osmotic pressure wave of people that are being used as pawns to overwhelm the system of America. Freedom and peace. It has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with being American.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today with Land of the Free with the famous Doc Pete Chambers. We have two very special guests on. One of them I've had the pleasure of knowing virtually and never actually getting to meet until today. And another one I've heard Doc talk about quite a bit. We've got Karolina Stancik and Daniel Rudy to join us today. Doc, how are you doing?
I'm happy to be alive. How are you? You doing okay, Melissa?
Oh, yeah, I'm probably doing as good as anybody could be doing right now in our world and how it's going. So, but yeah, we've got a great show lined up today. Obviously, it hits home personal for me and for you. And hopefully a lot of our audience can support our guest today. All of our links will be available in the descriptions if you would like to donate. The options are there and to follow our guests on their socials. So make sure to check that out. And this is a live show. We are able to see your comments. You are able to engage with us. Please, any questions that you have for our guests or for Doc, drop them in the chat and we'll see them and we'll answer them if we can. Doc, I'll be in the background. I'll be back at the end for questions.
Okay, well, I'm going to bring in Karolina and Dan, and we'll go ahead and pop them up because we want to say hi and get to the rat killing, as John Wayne used to say. Hey there.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, how's things down in Florida? How'd you guys fare out of that last little windstorm that came through?
Well, thank God from 2 years ago, losing my house, to this one just being a lot of rain. I feel blessed that things are not didn't happen that bad for us here in Orlando, so we're lucky.
Yeah. Well, I remember that last one. We're going to talk a little bit about that because that was when I met you right after you got kicked out of your house by a hurricane that came across Fort Myers, I believe. And it was one of those geoengineered deals that kind of took a right-hand turn and cut across your state.
Yeah, afterwards, the very next day, it was 50 degrees in Florida after a hurricane and in September. So that doesn't happen. So, yeah, the geoengineering was in full effect for sure.
I think, Karolina, you might have been down there too on that one.
No, actually, I was traveling the coast at that time. So I was trying to drive south while that was coming up north.
You were headed towards the hurricane.
Yeah, right into it.
right into the line of fire. Well, I like that attitude.
Well, all right, so West Virginia and Tennessee, I was like, I'm not doing this, not today.
Yeah, no, that was smart. So today is a little bit different than my usual show because usually I focus on border stuff. I'll do a real quick once over the world. The border still has an invasion going on. There are still infiltrators in this country right now that are still wanting to do harm. But just understand this, and this is the modicum of hope that we can give, is that there are people, men and women, standing in the way, standing in the gap to provide security, regardless of what the federal government does, regardless of what other entities are doing or not doing. And we are working feverishly to get to this end of this marathon we've been racing with the deep state or the world economics or whoever you want to call it. I call it the satanic forces of hell. But we're in this fight and we're in it together. And these are two of my favorite people in the world because they've been in this fight from the beginning when it comes to the COVID debacle facade, as we called it down in, 3 years ago, Dan, 2 years ago when we had that conference in Orlando, the bioweapon that has been used against this country in this fifth generation warfare as one of the lines of effort. So that's where I met these two folks. I'm going to go real quick, though. I want to first go to Karolina, and I want just give us a little bit so people understand on this show, if they haven't seen you, you've been out there a lot lately with a lot of different, Chris Como and Bongino, I believe.
No, Chris Como and Catherine Herridge.
Catherine Herridge, that's right. That was somebody else was on Bongino. You'll probably be on it next. Who knows?
We'll see.
what I like is that they're focusing now on the vax damage, because this is really something that Dan and I were talking about just before the show. We all were, that the focus sometimes has become what kind of lawsuits are we going to get and all of these other things. But we really need to look at once again the modicum of hope that's out there for those of us that have been vax damaged, or anybody that's been around that and been affected by spike proteins. I'm going to say it, the bioweapon that is what it is. But Karolina, give a quick once over the world as to what brought you here, and then then go ahead and say how you met me, because I think it's important for people to understand the relationships here.
Yeah, so my name is Karolina, and I was vax injured in the U.S. Army. Since 2021, have had 3 heart attacks, a mini stroke, and 8 weeks ago, I received a pacemaker. So I've been fighting the fight, speaking out, trying to advocate for other people who've been vax injured. And I got to know Doc throughout this, and Dan has treated me as well.
That's you're being very modest, but I'm going to tell you that this lady right here, she's a fighter. This soldier, she's a fighter. And anybody that would think that in your young 20s or mid 20s that you would have to go through something like this and thinking that this is normal or this is acceptable, wrong answer. And
Right.
she has never had she's never had the glass half full or half empty, I should say. Always, no matter how bad she's felt, she still comes up with a smile and still comes up with the right attitude, which is in my book means a lot, because I've seen grown ass men downrange cry like babies, and I've not seen her do that once, not once.
You just don't see it.
I don't see it, but you know what? That's what a good soldier does, right?
Yeah.
We've had conversations throughout this fight, and we did get you to Dan, which now I'm going to introduce, and I want Dan just once over the world, just kind of say how we met once again, just because it's really he is somebody that exudes the kingdom of God 24/7, right? This is somebody that just like out there doesn't do it for money, fame, does it. Matter of fact, giving and creating something right now that we'll end up talking about. And he's one of those too. He'll just say, "Hi, my name is Dan, and I'm helping people." But there's more to it than that. So go ahead, Dan.
Doc, it's an honor to be friends with you and to be on the front lines with you with this. As someone who suffered this hell, that was diagnosed with early stages of Alzheimer's and CTE in March of 21 from this biological warfare, to be able to reverse it was all God. And to be able to help others is just a testament, is I'm a vessel trying to help others through God. And being along with these frontline heroes, I'm just a humble servant trying to do my best. And you know what I call myself? I call myself Forrest Gump, because I have zero idea how I get into these situations with such amazing people. But we were all in this together as God's people, as spokespeople, to try to get our fellow Christians to start acting, to helping others. Is to me the highest serving you can do. So with every breath I have in my body until my last breath, I will be here to help our brothers and sisters like Karolina, who I look at as like a daughter that if I'd never had, that I'm so proud of, because she is such a warrior. She's battling. She's been fighting an enemy that does not want to admit to the mistakes of what they've done to us. And with that, I'm just humble and so glad to be on with all three of you. Because there's another warrior that's your producer, that the bravery that is seen before us is absolutely incredible, and everybody that we meet seems to be God's warriors. That's the most beautiful part of it all. So that's
there you go. And we have a saying up here in the team room. All of our guys that work with me all exhibited something during this fight. This was a culling out phase for me, as far as like, okay, who are the real people? Not the optics people, but who are the real people? Who are the ones that really stand in the gap or would be there side by side with you, be it on a battlefield or on this invisible battlefield that we're in now. And it's not so invisible when you have injuries, right, Karolina? I mean, it's not so invisible.
Not at all.
Yeah. It's pretty pathetic what our institutions did to us, but in a way, it just like war. Okay, the last 20 years of being in Afghanistan, it really showed me the truest virtue of a warrior, which is love, right? It showed me that, because whether they pulled out in 2 weeks and gave billions of dollars of equipment, whatever, and if somebody says, well, well, you guys were just used as pawns or whatever. Okay, that's fine. I may not believe in the actions of my government when they send people to go do things in harm's way, but I do believe in those next to me in the foxhole when I need them and when they need me. That's what we do. And so, Dan, ministry is service, and service is ministry. So you're a minister, just like I was told, and I didn't believe it. I'm like, I'm not a minister. Well, the ministry is service. And so when I go out and do a community service down here, in Texas, or I've been everywhere from Alaska now to Florida, it's service. Get in my truck, and Joe and me, we drive, and it's a ministry. And it's our saying on the team here is ever stalwart, which means always faithful. It's like Semper Fi for the Marines, ever stalwart, but for the kingdom. That's the response. So when one of our guys goes ever stalwart, the other guy goes for the kingdom. And it's because as long as we're kingdom focused, then the ultimate outcome, whatever it is, whether we live or die, or with this blink of an eye that is our lifespan, whatever it is, you've demonstrated what you're really made of. You're metal. And so anybody on my team, we were just talking about this up here. I got Sam sitting here with me. These things I don't need a resume. Matter of fact, I don't even want a resume on a piece of paper. I want to know, what did you do? All right, what did you do when it got to the nut cutting, when it got serious? That's a Texas saying. Castrating calves. Sorry about that. The nut cutting. I didn't mean it any other way. But that's what it is. And so. That's great. So I want to explain what Dan did for me, and then I want Karolina to tell her story about that and what it's done. When Dan called me, we were actually at that conference in Orlando. What was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, it was Dr. Littell's conference that he put together, and I spoke, and I was sick as a dog. I mean, I had the Moderna hit, one of the very first people in the Department of Defense to get it, because I couldn't go to work as a provider unless I took it. I didn't know a thing. I got a yellow card of shots, 2 cards full from 39 years of doing Army stuff. And, I was like, okay, well, I got to take this thing. There was not even a VAERS data blip on the screen at the point. And then as people started getting sick, and as I got sick and got demyelination and testified in SEALs versus Lloyd Austin, and I was sicker than a dog, and Teresa Long, one of the other heroes in this thing, came up to me and said, after I testified, she's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, I'm not." And I left the court case and went to my hotel room to go lay down, because I'm 175 pounds and typically about 195. And I was sick. But then I got to see you after that conference, Dan, and then you ran me through some photobiomodulation, which was a week long of ups and downs and getting some of these toxins out. But it really was the first kickoff for me to reverse that damage that was to the myelin sheaths in my brain, that I couldn't think straight. I couldn't operate. And then I have not had one day of vertigo or any of that since then. Pretty amazing. So from your side, what did you see when I came in? And then explain what you did so that people know kind of where this therapy is and what we're going to be working on, which we'll get to.
You were ashen gray. You were, as we were treating you, you got grayer. By day 3, I'm like, all right, we got to go haul you into the near-infrared sauna and sweat some of the stuff out, because what happens is the spike protein gets so built up in people's systems that the organs can't filter the stuff out properly. So what's the biggest organ in our body? It's our skin. So if you use sauna, you can help get some of that out. But I knew from being on the teams and from my own self, and then understanding where this was going, what photobiomodulation can do. And the power of it being able to act as basically a mini EMP to some of these spike proteins. Like, it can literally get to the bomb before the bomb goes off. And once you get that cleared out of the system, and you give some nutraceuticals, we now have incorporated, since I've treated you, 3 different types of IVs: methylene blue, curcumin, and then Dr. Mueller's IV that we call the MIC, that he's been using for like 20 years on patients that have been terminally ill, or very potent stuff. So combining that with you, after we did the near-infrared sauna, you said that when you went to the bathroom, it smelled like what?
Like burnt rubber.
Yeah, burnt. And I hear that a lot. But know thy enemy, know thyself, never fear 100 battles. And when we knew this was a biological warfare and a weapon, we always looked at it for countermeasures to the weapon, not a virus that was causing this damage. We knew it was spike. So
Right.
we have developed the protocols. Before I treated you, I did a mini trial with Dr. Rhett Bergeron in Roswell, Georgia. And within 1 week of treatment, we mapped brains before and after. We had a 30% increase in cognitive function. From symptomatic reasons, we've seen people that were 3 and 4 on the scale of pain, different variances of what their signs and symptoms, to 8 and 9s. So that was pretty incredible. And now that we've incorporated the IVs, we have such a very high rate of success to where it's not a cure, because we have shedding still. So people are going to be not immune, but sensitized to the spike from others if they're already being affected by it. So, but it is a way of giving people back a life that's worth living, like what you're being able to do. And this is all through God. He gave us a perfect body, a perfect immune system. This thing was designed to break it down. We are breaking down the thing that's hurting the immune system to give it ability to allow the immune system to come back online. And over and over, I hear the same thing. The muscle wasting, the weight loss, 6 months to a year later, it's back on after treatment, after therapies. Yep. Is it 100%? No, because, there's over 200 signs and symptoms with this. We do know that the spike protein is like an ammunition. And just like munition, you can change the delivery of the munitions, right? So you can put different types of tips on the munition. So we're seeing that the spike protein, there's different spikes out there causing different things, different toxins. Bingo. So that's what makes this thing such a unique thing to tackle when we're dealing with patients, because 40% of our country was already unhealthy beforehand.
That's it. So when we met, Karolina, we were in Sarasota when we physically face-to-face met, and we were at a opening of a clinic that was down there, and Ann Vandersteel was there, and Dr. Artist was there, and you walked up, and I'm like, great to meet you. And at that point, what had already, it transpired with your symptoms and those kind of things?
So at that point, I think I was just shy of 4 months out from having a mini stroke. So I was battling, like severe vision loss, dizziness, numbness, tingling, loss of function in my hands, my legs. And I mean, on top of that, I had severe palpitations, high heart rate, all of those things. And so pretty much from head to toe, my body was just shutting down. And so, I mean, I was like, I need help somehow, somewhere. I need help. But at that point, I didn't have many resources. I didn't have much money. I wasn't getting that much pay because I had lost my job due to all of this. And so, yeah, I reached out to you and was like, do you know anyone? And you were like, yeah, here's Dan. So That was pretty much that.
Yeah, and you went through a few treatments, and I know that it was hard because you had a cardiac hit on yours. I didn't have a cardiac hit. I went through a full stress test, and I was okay that way. And like what Dan's talking about with this different munition theory, or analogy, it makes sense. And so, a lot of people. My first case on the border was a 27-year-old that had a guy that was a troop down there, an infantry kid from North Dakota or South Dakota. And he had just got the shot, got to the border, and then we put him in the heart hospital with both myo and pericarditis. So
wow.
The lining around his heart was inflamed, and the muscles of his heart were inflamed. And then he ended up getting an ejection fraction, so that's how much your heart pumps, of 70-something%, which he should be in the high 90s at that age. Yeah. So he was equivalent to somebody with congestive heart failure. So he got out of the military, and I lost track of him because he went back home to South Dakota. They had sent some troops down to help us. And so that was my first case where I started going, wait a minute, what's going on? This is before I got any help or knew anything. And then we were just talking about, I started doing informed consents at that time and saying, hey, don't take this shot. And here's why, right? 6,000 soldiers came on the border, and I think only 6 people opted to take the shots because they heard the briefing, which you might have well put a skull and crossbones on my slides that said mRNA on the forehead. And they were like, bah, running out like, okay, no, sir, we're not going to take them. And, and that's ultimately the demise of my career down there. But it didn't matter because at that point, we all started realizing, okay, this is a war. We're being hit. We don't know who's the actor. It doesn't matter, because when you're in the trenches and somebody's shooting at you, you don't go, well, is it the Chinese? I don't know. We just go, they're shooting at us. So let's get off the X, right? Let's stop this. and we did the best we could. And by you getting out on shows and exposing these things, and then Dan has done a bunch, and I've been on his a couple times. You start exposing, but we didn't have the large audience, so that's why it was so important when you got on those big ones to bring awareness to the damages, so that we can then start to lobby. Now you see people up on the Hill talking about it, and all that, but we've also got to fix, and we know that there's some people out there that are doing that in the DoD itself to get help for these people, because they didn't get anything. I mean, the ones that I had, another one that was 30-something years old with a stroke like yours, but his was so bad that I had to explain to his wife, because he couldn't speak to her. He's still in speech rehab. He had a stroke so bad, he's still like he had a hemorrhagic stroke, a bleeding stroke, but he didn't. It wasn't from that. They tried to explain it as that, but it wasn't that, you know. So there's a lot of things that have been brushed under the rug, and hopefully nobody will see this. But when I had troops, we know that after I got fired, that they were finding dead in their hotel rooms and saying that it was a heat casualty. I'm sorry, that doesn't normally happen. Like that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen after a night of sleeping in a hotel room with air conditioning. You know, if they're going to have a heat casualty, it would have happened when they were pulling a observation post on the border in 110 degrees. So that's what I saw. And so thank you for doing what you're doing and getting out there, Karolina. And of course, Dan, thanks for helping us and others. I want to shift a little bit now, because I want to focus on the Hope House a little bit. So we got plenty of time, but I want to talk about that, and then we're going to come back with a couple other stories. So Dan, give us a once over the world of the Hope House.
Okay, so myself, I went through same thing both of you did, right? As a first wave long hauler before it was ever even known, 2 strokes, myocarditis, muscle wasting, diagnosed with the early stage dementias, Alzheimer's, CT, all that good stuff. I knew as an advocate going before the Congress and Senate, not once but twice, trying to get bills passed to get help for us, that we were going to have to do this on our own, because when they did approve funding for the stuff that we pushed for, they put it right in the hospital system. They say they have long haul or long COVID treatments, but they don't. They're just monitoring, testing so they get more money. So Hope for Humanity, God told me to create this May 10th of 2020 that showed me we were going to be dealing with this for as long as we can possibly think of. He kept telling me to not only speak out, but to help his people, help our people. And the best way that I can do that is to offer what we are doing currently with the therapies, the photobiomodulation, the IVs, and so forth and so on with the experts, and help the frontline workers that have been injured, help the military that have been injured, the soldiers. Because to me, those are the 2 most essential assets that we have to rebuild our army in the front lines, to put the evil back to the gates of hell they're at. So Hope House is this. Most of our patients can't afford to travel. They can't afford to even get any type of therapy or stay at a place when they're getting therapy here locally. So we want to be able to give them a place to stay at the Hope House while they're getting treatment, while they're getting therapy, but also give them a home where they're not being gaslit, where they can be around others to understand that they're not alone. So many times, so many patients that I deal with, they think they're alone. They think they're the only ones suffering this. And then when they see my show or they see someone I'm speaking to, like Danny Baker, they start bawling their eyes out going, you mean I'm not alone? No. So it's a place of healing. It's a place where we give hope back, and we give God's people the right and the voice to get therapy and stop suffering. God gave us immense power to help. And for me, I'm just a single soldier in this battle. But with people like you and Karolina, our girl Shelly, Michelle Utters listening in right now, Danny Baker, there's so many that can not only need help immediately right here, right now, but 1 in every 3 people that have been affected by this right now, statistically, are going to suffer some form of long COVID or long vax from this. And so if we don't do something right here, right now, this is what Hope House is about. We need help. We need some funding so we can get some more equipment. We have some really amazing doctors that are not only donating their time, but are all in with this. They're going to make sure each step of the way that you understand what's going on, that you are getting therapies. And we want to create like pay it forward programs. Like we want to start taking on like the Karolinas of the world, that people who don't know Karolina, but others, and do like a pay it forward campaign. So we'll put their information up, what they're suffering from, and you can sponsor this person to be able to get here so they can get treatment and get funding. So and then advocating and educating, because most people, they're silent suffering, Doc, because they've been gaslit and told this was just a minor flu, this is just a cold, you'll be fine. But yet every 2 to 3 months they start suffering more signs and symptoms. They can't figure out why. So, and to me, that's the most essence of what we're doing here. It's through God. We're all Christians. We're all just trying to pay it forward and serve others. And I want to see us treating thousands of people every single day. But it's going to take an army of our fellow brothers and sisters and Christians that can help donate. We're a 501c, so it's a tax deductible donation. Every little thing that you're donating is going to go towards our patients. And Carolina and all the others that I've been helping will verify what we're doing 100%. Like, I donate almost as much time as I possibly can to help our brothers and sisters. So Doc, thank you for having me on to talk about this, because
Oh, yeah.
you know my heart, and I'm just praying that it takes off, that we can get more of these. We should have 5 of these in Texas. We should have 5 of these in Florida.
You should. Yeah.
So-
And this is my question to be to Carolina now. When do they let you start driving so that you can go see him again?
I can start driving. It's just
Okay.
I've been in a lot of doctor's appointments and stuff, and spine
Yeah.
procedure, all these things and whatnot. But yeah, no, I can drive again, and so trying to make trips. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we definitely want to see you, fully recovered, and it's, the damage for you. I mean, it's one of the worst ones that I've seen, as far as the average is typically the brain fog and things like that, but is not irreparable. It is just it's a time thing. It's just a time thing, and you're hanging in there, and you're doing great, and so I respect that, but it's not irreparable, but it's just because you had to experience that with your electrical system in your heart, so to speak. It's a miracle that you've been so. I mean, you bounce back pretty amazing. I mean, when I see you, I'm like, not the person that I just saw from the picture in the hospital.
Yeah.
So you're part of that is your constitution as well, which is pretty amazing. So we do appreciate you being on here and talking about it, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. I'm sure, Dan, you run into them all the time. When I was down there, we went and visited some people and did house calls, and some of these folks are just they're depressed. I mean, they're alone. They feel like they're alone, and you come in and you can just see them shine. And we're there for 2 or 3 hours just talking most of the time, but you're treating while you're doing it. So pretty amazing system that you've got going on there. So and I know it's out of love, and love conquers all, because fear, love casts out all fear, but fear can cast out love. So we want to make sure that we keep that hope alive. So I do appreciate it.
Well, Doc, you you motivate so many people. You are a living John Wayne, and we need as many of the warriors. Sometimes I do feel like we're at the Alamo together, where you say, they're surrounding us from all walks, all angles. And it's true. This was planned out. You get deeper into the spirituality of it. They've had decades to plan what they've been doing with this. And, one little light of hope, if we start showing these people that we can reverse this in thousands, it'll start taking the fear off of this, because a lot of people are scared to death to even think about, because they've seen friends and family pass away, had strokes, had heart attacks.
Right.
And so we got to get that stigma away from it. It is what it is, but if we get the right therapies in and give the human immune system what it needs, it can bounce back.
Oh yeah.
And
I believe that.
We can move mountains with this. And Carolina is such a warrior. I was so proud to see her on those shows. And tell Chris Cuomo, his doctors don't know crap when it comes to some of this that can be done. And I call him out, because some of the experts need to step away, because they've been chasing the wrong thing, and learn, because energetic based medicine will be the future of how we can treat almost any chronic illness. And there's a lot of good people on the front lines, but the media's not talking about it. They only give you fear, doom, and gloom, and tell you to take more bioweapons, more shots, stuff no one wants. And as Christians, we all come together. We share our stories, and we never live in fear. That's the one thing about Christians. Fear is not in our vocabulary. We know what's coming afterwards. But while we're here on this planet with both feet in the fire, we need to do what we possibly can. I was asked to explain my background. I'm a former medic. A former pharmaceutical manager, a whistleblower early on. I was following the trials, the original trials that were all halted. I was sharing the data that everything that we see right now was in those trials. So I was a whistleblower before I was anything else, and I was an advocate for long COVID long haul. And then we knew from the trials, I'd be saying people like you, Doc, and Karolina. And it's heartbreaking to know that they knew this, but we have to continue to be the light and the hope in this darkness to show them the way, to lead them out of the desert to the land of milk and honey. And that's the most beautiful part about the journey is we're all in this together. The more we come together as brothers and sisters, the faster we can beat and stomp this evil back to the gates of hell where they belong.
I know you've been doing it, and I appreciate your model, because your model of building this Hope House is a lot like what we did down here in Texas with this think tank, which we turned into a do tank, right? We do stuff. And so you're doing stuff like every day. I know you're out there and you're beating the brush and you're looking for folks to help. And that's really, when I go to these conferences and things and I talk to folks, and I got nothing against the big conferences, but sometimes they turn into, we're redefining the problem. And then it becomes I was the first person to figure this out, or I was the first person, but what are you doing about it? That's the thing is I want to see people in the dirt, like doing something about it in the trenches, because without that, we can just sit there and pat each other on the back in a conference and then leave and feel good. But what really got accomplished? Because they spend a lot of money doing that, and people get a lot of speaking fees and all that. And I've turned them down and just said, it ain't about speaking fees. It's about what are you doing, right? And that's where we're going to be blessed. Because in this right now, we are in this situation for Texas at the front line of not only, I don't do so much on the injury side of the house. I'm a plumber on the battlefield. That was my job. I stopped bleeding in combat. So I'm not a virologist or epidemiologist, but I still remain a spokesperson for this because it's what happened, but it's also what we stood in the gap to protect from. One of my guys on my team was a senior ranking officer on the border with me, the only officer to stand up at that level and get in this fight. So that's one of our litmus tests when we bring somebody on is what did you do, as I said before. And so, we're hoping that we can recruit Karolina out here so she can come help us destroy some of these bad actors.
Do it.
Yeah, well, with your experience and background, we'll definitely have you out here helping us because and this is not just about Texas, okay? It is for me right now, but this is about nationwide. It's about the Union. It's about the Republic. It's also about the Republic of Texas, which is a whole nother story. We'll get to that one day. But so Karolina, what's next for you? Because we're okay for time, another 15 minutes or so. But what's next for you?
I mean, waiting to get medically discharged, medically retired, and things like that. But I've been very big on advocating for people who have been injured, been suffering, people who've been wronged by the government, by the military, any employer at this point. We're kind of working on the back end of things with litigation, legislation, all of those, overturn policies that protect these people from seeing any sort of consequences of their actions. And so that's kind of been like my biggest thing. But I would have to say, as an advocate and a patient, I could 100% guarantee that you, Dan, and your Hope House and stuff are 100%, what people need. You can go to the big names, you can go to the big corporations and things like that and ask them for help. But in the end of the day, you walk in, you walk out. You don't get the help you need. You don't have someone who listens and someone who treats you in a timely manner. A lot of these people are there for the money, and that's not how you treat your patients. And I could verify that.
Yeah, I know you can. And I think too, you just recently had a victory on the DOD side of the house, right, where I don't know if you can talk about it, so I won't push you to answer the question, but you did have a victory in that some of the things were reinstated for you.
Right.
Yeah.
So we received documentation. It's called a line of duty. And in that line of duty, it attributed my cardiac conditions to the COVID vaccine, which by default, they said the COVID vaccine or the virus, but I have not a single positive test for the virus. So it's a massive acknowledgement. And
that's right.
Whether or not they meant it, whether or not they understand what they were doing and things like that when they wrote this document, it provides not only me, but other service members some sort of avenue to seek restitution and, get the help they need and financial coverage, because I was completely and utterly left high and dry, basically, with $70,000 plus medical dollars in debt. As a 24-year-old, that's not something you can really balance mentally, emotionally, right, spiritually, any of that. And so we got that, but then we also won my case of the Board of Corrections. And so we were able to basically get them to say, hey, we wronged her. and we have to pay all this back. And it's going to be a fight. It's not like it just happens overnight. One step is them having their word, but then step two is going to be them taking action. And so
I remember early on in your case where I got a hold of one of your people at your command, and they refused. And I talked to some sergeant who was going to get me to this officer, refused to talk to me. And I just said, hey, this is Colonel Chambers, calling, blah, blah. And
was this when I got my med board threatened?
Yes.
I know exactly who you're talking about. It's funny because he just recently reached out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So he had to come to Jesus.
More later.
Okay, well, I'd love to talk to him. I think that maybe now he wouldn't feel so threatened. Have him watch this video and just say, look, I'm not about going after you unless you do the wrong thing again.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk. But eventually, the Declaration of Military Accountability, which came out on January the 1st of this year, at 0400 hours was delivered to the Joint Chiefs, 231 signatories who are very brave individuals, some still on active duty and some like you that are still affiliated with that. You realize that there is an accountability coming. There is there's an accountability.
And I mean, we didn't expect my stuff to take, a week and a half to get a result back. We were expecting 2 years. That's what they had told us. And I was like, there's no way in hell am I doing that. There's not a chance. And so, I mean, I very much so wrote in my statement, I was just like, the least that you guys could do is grant me full relief. And they ended up doing it. Granted, I had to pay thousands for attorneys and stuff. And thanks to donations, that was, that cost was alleviated off my shoulders. But yeah, I mean, accountability must be had. And I really can't stop speaking until then. So
we're gonna have Melissa come back in, but and thank you for that, Karolina. We're gonna have her come back in because there may be questions. But what I want to do say while we're bringing her back in is that with regard to donations and things, you can see anybody watching this that your donations resulted in her being able to fight this on the legal side. Your donations will be able to help Dan as far as getting this house built, and your donations have helped us in Give Send Go, where we were able to kick off what we're doing now, and we're starting to get some help with it because we've been able to get some visibility. So when you have people like this that are doers, I don't say that anybody that just writes about things and does blogs or does anything like that is wrong. But if that's your only eloquence in life is just to write about something and talk about something and not do something about it, then you need to search your own soul as to what you're doing, because everything that we've raised on my own personal thing has been between, it's funny, I get a lot of $17 and $45.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, we the people have come together to be able to give us the opportunity to do something on a very grand scale now at a national strategic level. Okay, so it's God that's doing this. It's inspired, but it's you people out there that are making this happen. So really, you should give yourselves a pat on the back for that, because collectively you've been able to move this whole thing. And as one of my buddies on the team here says, blocking and tackling. That's what this is. This is smash mouth football right now. And it's been little increments that have been winning this to win over those that have been Stockholm syndromed and are going to get out of it. So Melissa, what do we got for questions?
Well, actually, I had a couple. I'm very interested in Karolina because I haven't gotten to speak to her yet. And unfortunately, I haven't seen many shows with you yet. So I guess my question for you is, were you skeptical at all facing this pressure of being in the military and then you went against better judgment? Or were you totally just not aware of the conspiracy theories at the time? What happened?
So I actually was working in the hospital at the time. I was working in the surgical building. And so, they told me, you guys are all going to have to get this shot and stuff. And I had just joined the military in February 2021. So at the time they're telling me I have to get this shot and the military is telling me you're going to have to get this shot, I was like, if anyone is going to make me get this shot, which to my understanding at that time, I was 1 month in, military forces you to get all shots no matter what. I didn't know there was such thing as exemptions. I was like, the military will be the one to give it to me because someone has to hold them liable for any injuries that happen. Now, did I expect something bad to happen to me as a healthy individual? No. I didn't expect within 6 months to have a heart attack at 21. I didn't expect to get a pacemaker at 24. That's nothing that was on my radar. But I did, I had my concerns, and I knew that something, someone was going to be held liable.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The mandates, they're totally unlawful, 100%. And even Pfizer, was like in the last minute to mandate to their employees because they knew they didn't want to give it to their employees because they knew it was sketchy and they didn't want their employees dropping off like flies. I had 2 coworkers who got vaccine injured, one from the Pfizer vaccine, where Pfizer openly documented and confirmed that she was vaccine injured from their vaccine, and another friend's was Johnson and Johnson, and you were Moderna. So just across the board, these things were shams and just disgustingly intentional at this point. Because how many warnings did they have? How many people did they have reaching out trying to, send up the smoke signal to tell them, hey, there's all these red flags. And then beautiful young women like you and strong young men who had this future ahead of them all of a sudden get this hard stop right on them because they did what they were told to do. Like, I just, it just makes me so sad. And as you were saying earlier, with people don't like to talk about their vaccine injury, why do you think that is? Do you think they feel like, why do you think that is? Daniel, Doc, you can weigh in on this too. Why do you think that is that they don't like to talk about it?
Shame, reputation, that how dare you blame big pharma for something? Medicine's supposed to be good for you. I mean, yeah, you would hope, but people who make money typically don't.
So like they might be afraid of getting called an anti-vaxxer, which to me makes no sense, because if you were an anti-vaxxer, you wouldn't have got it in the first place.
It's just that one was too quick and too soon, and honestly, not enough research, and it was political the whole entire time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons that I've seen. Shame, embarrassed that they took it, and now they know the truth. Hey, look, whatever's happened before, just get over it. You've got to understand that whatever decision you made. Look, I took a thing called Ross River flu vaccine when I went to Australia. Never heard of it in my life, right? In 2005. And they said, we're going to operate in Australia to train in this swampy area. You got to take this shot. I took it. It's there. It didn't kill me. Anthrax vaccine. How many different installments of that did I get? All right. Lots of toxins in my body. You're breathing leaded gasoline fumes in Afghanistan. Came back with lead in my body, in my bloodstream. 15 nanograms per deciliter. Not a good amount. Should be 0. Right. I mean, these are the hazards of the trade. It doesn't mean it's okay. It just means that I'm not going to let it happen again. I'm going to warn people of it. That's why I was so adamant down there. I didn't know I had a vax injury. I had no idea. I was still working, pulling my car over, jumping out of planes, having vertigo in the sky, not trying to, slam my body into the ground at terminal velocity, and then going, wait a minute, there's something wrong. Got an MRI, and they said, you got demyelination severe. All right, looks like multiple sclerosis. Okay, well, at that point, I've already told people don't take the shots, and I'm injured. So what? I'm injured. I go back to war. I get shot in combat. I've been shot in combat. Did I quit? No, I didn't go home. I said, I'm not going home. We're in the fight together. That's what we do. It's hard. It's hard. I don't want pity. I just want you to understand that we're not going to let anybody else get wounded. And that's just how I think. Doesn't mean everybody thinks that way. That's just how I think.
Well, Doc, you also, as a Green Beret, understand the infrastructure of a society. And when we're dealing with the amount of people that are suffering this, what does it take for like a city of New York, if the population is a certain percentage level is ill and cannot function? What will take down a system like that? 10%, 15% of the population, if they're ill, they can't function? What does it take to bring down a system? Because that's what I'm also worried about long term, is so many people are ill right now that are not being reported or even talked about, and they're not talking on it.
I'll give you an example of that. There was recently a video that came out of communist China, which it's kind of old, but it's apropos. It's the Chinese government leadership talking about their production of this shot and what it was going to do to American military, all right, what it was going to do to them. And it was just going to take time for them to weaken the military from within. Now, did somebody create this after the fact? I don't know. But I've seen and I've heard discussion about that. So if you're taking something down from within, a Marxist technique to do it, Saul Alinsky writes about this, rules for radicals. Number 1 rule, take down the medical system, and then you take down a country. What's the percentage on that? I don't know. It depends on the city. It depends on their infrastructure capabilities to resupply logistics. There's a lot of factors that go into that. But I do know that that is a technique, and it's number one technique for taking down a country from within. So if that's the case, if we see that, we need to see it for what it is, understand it, so that we can get what we call left of bang. Before the bomb in the road hits you, we're left of bang on a timeline. We've got to see it coming at us. So this next thing, that's where I focus, right? The next thing, is it avian flu? Is it Marburg? Is it hemorrhagic flu? Is it, what is it, monkeypox? Whatever they're going to call it, it doesn't matter. We just know that it's going to be there. And so what do? We defy. We don't play the game this time as a whole, because we're out of this Stockholm syndrome of trusting government thing. We already are. All right. They don't want you to believe that, but we are. We the people that do things are the ones that they're afraid of, because we do stuff, and we're not going to fall for that again. And that's where I see it. So exactly right, Dan. We see beyond it now. So it won't happen in the places where they don't allow it to happen. But where you got a bunch of people that are going to be sheeple and are going to be lemmings, unfortunately, it's going to happen to them.
You know, and the last thing that I say about this is the 80s are calling, and they want their pandemic back, because so many people are suffering very much like the early 80s with HIV. And
Right.
left untreated, you know, we're going to be losing our first, second, and third wave of people that have been suffering because their immune systems are on fire, and we're not putting the fire out. So that's what keeps me solely, specifically focused, laser focused on this topic. Just like you're laser focused on protecting our country, what's going on the border in Texas. But we all are doing our part, because God's chosen us in ways that we never would have thought of. But, you know, it as long as our fellow Christians are out there supporting us, we can continue the fight and helping our people get back to normalcy. But if we keep going, nothing to see here, hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil, well, evil is going to keep coming for us. So it's what keeps all of us going. I know it, because there's no fun. You're getting your teeth knocked in every day, trying to do the right thing, and you're going, are we living in a bizarre world? No, this is just dark times, and we're being the light. And the ones that are following the light are always the ones attacked the most, physically, mentally, spiritually. But God, I'm so happy to have been on here today. I haven't seen you in such a long time, Doc. And Karolina, I can't wait to see you sooner than later.
I move next month, so hopefully once I move and get settled in and all that, I'll be able to come out more often. Should be a little bit closer to you now.
Good.
Good.
Yeah, we need
Yeah,
to get
I'm not going
together
to ask where, but I'm going to ask you off camera.
Hey.
There's, why do you think our own government, here's where I have difficulties. Obviously, working at Pfizer, I know some things about it, but whatever. Why would our own government knowingly release this bioweapon vaccine out and force it upon our own military, knowingly, if they're all a part of it? Why would they weaken our own military if it was our own government? Which makes me question, well, maybe is our government not in on the bioweapon and it's just solely an attack from China? Because I don't know if you guys know, I don't mention this often because I can't prove it. You either trust me or you don't, kind of thing by now, is when I was working at Pfizer, we were getting bags of pre-made vaccines in bags that were only marked with Chinese writings. And that's what was going in the vials, and that's what was going out to the people. So Doc, we had on your show not that long ago someone who talked about the laws, right, or whatever. Don't blame evil when it could just be that they're stupid, right? Like it just could be that our government's just like stupid. I don't know.
I think you know your latter assumption is probably more correct, because I do know a lot of people up on the Hill, and I didn't know them before I spent time up there, and they went, man, these people are so damn dumb they can't open a gate, you know, to push a bunch of cattle through. I mean, I got, you know, now I won't go into details about what kind of people they are that can do that stuff, but they're not that they don't go to Yale and Harvard. Like, they're just normal people, and they can do things for real. So DC is chock full of that. And I believe, to answer your question, Melissa, this is Pete Chambers theory, take it or leave it. There is a corporatocracy that's in control of our government. Okay, the corporatocracy, combination between democracy, which is not what we are. We are a republic originally, a constitutional republic. We've allowed that to be legally plundered In the words of Frederic Bastiat from 1800s, writing about the French Revolution, we've been legally plundered by a bunch of people that only focus is how much money can I make while I'm in office. Just the way it is. It's human nature just to say what's in it for me, and then DC becomes a party up there for lobbyists and those that are being lobbied, the legislators, and many of them have sold their souls. I don't think that the government itself, the government of the republic, if we had that perfect republic, would allow for something like this. But because they put their head in the sand and say there's no way that this corporation would do this, but they've allowed that to happen when back in the Reagan administration, when there was an act that was made to protect people that gave vaccines from any liability. So then you already have these things in place, right? So you have all these things in place, and they allow for money to be made and traded, and insider trading goes on in DC. They're allowed to do it. It's strangely enough, should be changed, but they're allowed to do it. So when they vote for something, they vote for more corporatocracy, legal plundering of systems. When we have people up on the hill making decisions whether we should go to war or not, you have corporatocracies in the form of military-industrial complex that says, hey, but you, General, now that you're a executive here at Raytheon or Boeing or whatever, we want you to make a lot of money, so vote yes, because when you get out of your uniform, we got a job for you, right? Vote for war. And so then guys like us and gals like us here, we go downrange, we fight for 20 years, and then we watch them give it all away to then do what? Start another war somewhere else in the Ukraine, start another war somewhere else in the Middle East. And so this perpetuates, a self-licking ice cream cone perpetuates itself. And that's really what's happening. So the dummies that are sitting in those seats with the names in front of the senator and congressman in front of it, most of them dummies, right? They don't know their butt from a hole in the ground.
They do what their sponsors tell them to. They don't usually have to think, right?
They do what their sponsors tell them to. They're lobbyists because they're going to take them out to dinner and they're going to wine them and dine them and do all whatever. And then they're going to give them money in their coffers, in their, in their donations. That's just the facts. That's just how it is. That system is broken. That's why we focus on the local, right? General Flynn says, act locally. It'll affect things globally. Yeah, that's what we do. So we, the people, are now arising, or me at the Remnant team, we call it We the Remnant. Matt's sitting over here, our main guy on marketing and supporting this. We the Remnant. That was our motto, or it's on our website. Because it's the remnant that of real people that believe in the constitutional republic. We had Mark Bashan, that's who you were talking about. He came on and talked about, sovereignty and really what it means. Not this thing that you need to buy a new passport and that, it's going to make you free and clear. No, we're talking about just living it. Just saying, we're not playing your game no more. And for me and Dad, so we do rodeo. We don't play polo, right? We're not playing on your playing field. We're not going there. So that's how that looks for me. That's Pete Chambers 101.
So, what about you, Dan or Karolina? Do you think, why would our own government do that? Or are they stupid, or do you think it's an attack from an outside country?
Well, we have, being former farmer, you get a lot of connections. You get a lot of inside information that most don't have access to, thanks to people that are like us that see what's going down. DARPA. We've got DARPA's documents from 15 years ago, 14 years ago. Pete's got tons of stuff too. This is not any accident. DARPA is trained to be 20 years ahead of the rest of the world ever since Sputnik. And for whatever reason, we won't know until we can get the evil ones that accomplish this in a Nuremberg type of trial or Nuremberg period, because informed consent was never given to any of these patients ever. When they knew what happened during the original trials, that if you just put in any of the trials in your Google, you'll see they were halted. And 3 weeks later, it was good to go, safe and effective, and forget everything. And we are now also not only understanding that what we've seen in the trials, and we have the data, that they cleaned those data points out when they presented it to the actual governments. And then, like you said, with Pfizer, particularly, in Australia, they shipped a whole different variant of their product to their own employees. I wonder why. Why did the Congress and Senate have exemptions to the mRNAs at the very beginning? They knew. But because they kept the fear train going. A lot of those representatives actually did take the jab themselves out of fear, and now a lot of them are suffering. We know this because I get back channeled for ones that are looking for help and ideas, but we can't get any movement forward to helping our brothers and sisters that are suffering this. So that's my 2 cents. I think they do know, but the ones that have pulled these strings will not allow that to get out until we can get rid of those people. And it's going to happen. It's going to have to, because the amount of injury, the casualties, the walking wounded, 1 in 3, and Dr. Zivjets, when we speak, goes, that's a low number. We're going, it's 38 to 40% now. I'm like, I know, but listen, I'm not trying to scare the bejesus out of people. I'm just trying to give them a sit rep on what is really out there, what is really going on, the best way I possibly can. And then having people like Karolina and Melissa, yourself, Michelle, Danny Baker, all the ones that are advocating to have them out there. I know people don't want to hear it most of the time, but they need to, because their brothers, their sisters, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents are being taken out left, right, and center and have no idea. I just keep seeing thoughts and prayers. I'm like, yeah, thoughts and prayers. Eventually it's going to be, to the point where society can actually collapse because we can't have enough citizens to maintain those structures that we enjoy. And, just recently they said, what happens, Doc, if we lose power over a 3 to 6 month period in the United States? What happens to civilians?
Within 72 hours, we'll be in complete collapse in most of the big cities.
And what happened in Israel, they had the same data. They injected their whole population, and Dr.
Brown control group.
Yeah,
and it went horrible, and they tried to bury it and hide it from everybody.
So then you see the geopolitics of the war that they're trying to implement, because eventually what Doc was talking about, our own military has been injured. Our DMED data shows with flying colors all the injuries that are going on. So have a war before they don't have an army anymore is what they're shooting for, I feel.
Hey, Melissa, can we put the Hope House across the bottom and then Karolina's too, so people can give before we leave?
Yes, we have them down in the description. So that's kind of what I want to say really quickly to the audience before we let Karolina give her input. Is some people are having a hard time. Like right now, we know that Biden's inflation is through the roof. People are having a hard time with money. Everybody is. But we also can't sit here and complain that nothing's getting done if we're not supporting the people who are out there fighting, trying to get this stuff done. And so maybe if you just, things I'm trying to do is make my coffee from home. Don't go get the $9 coffee and maybe donate that instead. Just little things like that I'm trying to do, because I'm getting tired of, me and others sitting in the sidelines and being like, why is nothing getting done? Why is nothing getting done? Everything costs money, and we're fighting money with money essentially. And guess what? Big pharma and the corrupt government has way more money than these good people who are out there trying to combat them. And that's why they need the help. That's why they need the donations. This is not handouts. None of them are out there traveling to Bali and to all of these elaborate vacation destinations spending donations. They need your help. Let's do that. Sorry to get so caught off on my tangent, but the links are down in the description. Please do that.
Yeah, that's good. Karolina, what we're going to give you and Dan a final thoughts here, and then we'll be cutting out in about 4 minutes.
Awesome. So touching on what Dan was saying, like all these people that are speaking up and whatnot. I mean, I don't think anyone in the government was completely stupid. I don't think that we are too far off from having information at our fingertips to know what's going on. It's just a matter of like, if you're seeing through it or seeing the whole picture. Because most people, they get wrapped up in like their current situation and they forget to look at the full picture. And as you know, before COVID, there was plenty of distractions. Then COVID hits and then they're like blinded by it. And then COVID starts dimming down. There's more distractions, and then bam, vaccine. And then they're like, isolate. And like, if I know for myself, like I knew that if I was going through something, and this is just my mindset, if I'm going through something, someone else might be going through it, and they have to be probably worse. And so I started speaking out, and I talk to people, the average person, and I go into the blood lab to get my blood drawn, talk to the phlebotomist and stuff, and she told my story to some kid like 3 weeks later, 3 months later, whatever. He reaches out and he's like, hey, this is my story. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, but who are you? How'd you find my name? And he was like, oh, I was getting my blood drawn, and I was like, I know exactly who I spoke to. And it's like, he goes, I honestly thought I was alone and I was on the verge of suicide. And he was like, if I didn't meet you, if I didn't hear your story, if I didn't know I wasn't the only person dealing with this, like, he would have committed suicide. And how many other people are dealing with that? And the people at the top, the government, these corporations, like, they're watching this happen and they just brush their hands off and act like they have nothing to do with it. Yeah.
That's right. Nobody cares till it's them or their mom or their dad or their kid or their friend. We're trying to prevent that and help you early. And
but I literally took him to some smoothie shop. I was like, let's just go, like, let's go talk, like, let's, share our stories and see if we can get you help. And I kid you not, him and I were sitting outside, whatever, at a table, and we're talking about it and stuff. And he was working for some government contractor. I obviously military, and this lady, she turns over and she's like, hey, are you guys talking about the vaccine and like what happened to you? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh my gosh. She was like, my daughter, this, that, the other thing. She's a Navy family. And she's like, I didn't know it was this big. And he's like, oh my God, 3 out of 3 people in the same patio have issues. If you just talk about it and open up the conversation, you will see how widespread it is. And that will do a lot more than being quiet. And
that's it. Great perspective. Yeah, you're spot on.
Tear down the dividing walls between us, pro-vax, anti-vax, whatever. It should be we the people against corruption is what it should be. So.
I love that. All right, Dan, you get the last word, brother.
Well, Hope House is about getting people stood back up, getting our fellow brothers out there, sisters, Christians help. I've self-funded every bit of I possibly could. Anything that you can donate will help more people like Karolina, like Shelly, and the rest out there. And God willing, we get this thing to where there's 5 and 10 in Florida and in Texas. Doc, I haven't asked you yet officially, but I'd love to have you on our board of the charity as some of the docs, because we're growing more and more. To get this thing on the next level, because we need it sooner than later. So anything that you guys can donate to Hope for Humanity, Give Send Go, it's Hope House Orlando, will help more than you could possibly ever imagine, because we've got a team here that really is trying to get more equipment, improve the therapies even better. Those therapies will help not only vaccine injured or long COVID, long haul, but anybody who's dealing with chronic illness. This is a code that we're cracking to give the immune system what it needs to boost itself, to help get into a homeostasis that we're looking for, so you guys can live a better life. And energetic-based medicine will change the world, and it'll all be through God's light and God's people. So bless you guys. And Doc, thank you for having me on. I look forward to seeing you sooner than later. And Karolina, same thing.
Yeah,
and Melissa,
you tell them doctors down in Florida I'm coming down there to be on the board, so they better be ready for Texas.
And we need to do a fundraiser here, like get a group of you, maybe get Mickey down here too, do a showing of his film. Like, all working together is what we do need. And if I can get our show, Dan the Messenger's Frontline Heroes on Clout Hub, I'm all about that. We talked to Todd for a minute and he was about it. So let's make this happen and get more help for our people. And Karolina, it's such a blessing to see you. I love seeing you when you are smiling and not in the hospital suffering. So God give her more days than this. And thank you, Jesus, for everyone on the front lines and
Amen.
For all your listeners. Thank you.
Amen.
You're warriors.
You did good.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, sister. Anything else, Melissa? Are we good?
No, I just one thing just to casually mention is when I came forward with whistleblowing, a lot of people reached out to me who wanted to expose things. I assume it's a similar situation with injury and things like that. I hope so, that they realize there's a community. But I had a whistleblower who actually only lives like 30 minutes from me. Crazy. That she was wanting to expose that the military gave her niece's husband the COVID-19 Moderna vaccine in 2004 or 2014, one of the two. Either way, it's too early.
Get the facts.
Yeah, either way, it's too early. And she actually has the medical documentation from his time in the military showing that at Fort Riley in Kansas, he was given the Moderna COVID-19 is what it was called, vaccine. So this is crazy.
Yeah, we heard about that case through Dr. Long. She knew about it.
Oh, good. Yeah, she's been working with Tom Renz, I believe, ever since then. So yeah, that's who she is. But thank you so much, Dan and Karolina, for the excellent show. I really hope to see some donations come from this. I'm going to donate. I think everybody out there should do what they can. You know, just a few dollars adds up if a lot of people do it. So any help you guys can give is great. So
You did good. Hey, thanks for coming on, guys. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you,
Once
Doc.
again. All right. Love you guys.